Hello there, Alan Plum here again with a little more from Shed Engineering. Now most of you will know that I'm trying to model a section of line in the Derbyshire Peak District from Haddon Tunnel to Bakewell Station and the small goods yard there. Now the majority of freight into Bakewell goods yard was just coal, although there was a company in Bakewell called DP Batteries around this era, and they were taking quite a substantial amount of lead for the manufacture of submarine batteries. And obviously in a small rural location like Bakewell, the amount of coal being delivered might have only been a dozen or so wagons per week, and so I was worried that there'd be a lack of interest on the layout. And it was this photo that first got me thinking, was it possible to depict the transition of coal from rail to road? And after all, coal freight and wagons play a major role on a lot of layouts, but how often is the unloading and loading depicted or modelled? And from that came the idea of the road system, to have a coal lorry come into the yard, get loaded by a conveyor and then leave again. And there you can see what is obviously a coal conveyor. So along with that photograph and photographs of the coal lorries owned by the local merchants, that's how the idea for the road system originally came about. So basically you simply have a tube buried under the road surface. The tube has a slot cut in it right along its length, and then you have a transit cord or chain that is pulled through the tube, and you can see the white cord entering the tube on the left there, and just behind the car you can see the transit pin sticking up, which is just a track pin bent at right angles into an L shape and pushed through the cord, and that comes up through the slot in the tube. By pulling on the other end of the cord or chain, the transit pin you have just seen will obviously move down or along the slot that's cut in the tube. With just a simple hole drilled in any of your existing vehicles, the vehicle can be dropped over the transit pin, and hey presto, your vehicle's on the move. Now so far I've tried 3 different diameters of tube. This was the first one I got from B&Q. This is more or less 8mm in diameter with an internal bore of about 4 and a bit. Now this already had grooves down the outside. I don't know whether you'll be able to pick that up on camera, so I thought if I'm cutting a slot then obviously that'll be an advantage, and I think it was quite helpful. To go around the fields I needed something a lot longer, and this is copper brake tubing from the local car spares shop. You then obviously need some kind of cord or chain. The nylon cord used in vertical blinds and roller blinds is absolutely ideal, and that's what I've used on the section coming down over the road bridge and into the station yard. I was also hoping this ball chain would work, and I've experimented with it. I was actually hoping this would work because you can get little metal connectors to join the 2 ends together, whereas using the nylon cord, that has to be sewn together with needle and thread. The red ball chain that I've got here is slightly thinner, and there you can see one of the connectors I was just mentioning, and in the thicker diameter tube that's not actually a problem if I can get hold of it and get it down the end of here. That's not actually a problem. That was perfectly fine. As you can see, the connector there slides inside. Come on, Al, stop messing about. The connector there slides inside and isn't a problem. And so, as you can see, you can fasten that onto any of the balls, and so you can adjust the length of the chain. But unfortunately, with the brake pipe, then I thought the connector would go through there, but it's just too tight, and so I'm having to either have a rethink or just use nylon cord on that section. So I haven't actually got the system working with the chain as yet, but I'm sure it will. This is the next size down. This is very thin tubing. This is about 3.5 millimeters in diameter, aluminium tubing. Got this from the model shop, and down that I'm just pushing some nylon strimmer cord. There you can see the transit pin sticking up, and I'm just putting the tractor over the transit pin, and so again you can pull the cord backwards and forwards and you've got the little tractor moving. As I mentioned before, perhaps alright for cameo situations, or could be used for a forklift truck going backwards and forwards between a lorry and a warehouse, or perhaps something like that. The beauty of this is that you can actually get the tractor to do a 2-point turn almost. And so again, the idea is that it's a simple push-pull mechanism. On something like that, I don't think you'd bother with a winch mechanism. And in this situation, the tube is just glued to the baseboard with double-sided tape, and then neoprene rubber built up either side of the tube to give a road surface. On this section, where I'm using the vehicle brake pipe, then first of all you've obviously got to dig a trench round your landscape for the pipe to lay into, and then you've got to bend the pipe so it's exactly the same as the contour of the landscape. In my case, this obviously presented some problems because I've got to bend it to go under the railway there, and then try and lift it out without disturbing it to be able to cut the slots. So it's not easy. Now the reason you have to do all the bending first is because as soon as you cut the slot in the tubing loses all rigidity and it becomes so flexible and floppy that you end up that the slot actually twists round and is no longer on the top. And so if you try rebending it or moving it at all, it distorts so badly that the slot just closes up, and so it's an absolute waste of time. It's got to be put in position and disturbed as little as possible. A small little bender that has helped a lot, because to get it to fit as nicely as this, the tendency is for it to always be springing back, and so this little bender can give minute adjustments to the piece of pipe, so I can just lift it, slot it underneath and bend it, and I'm getting very precise bends at particular points. If you try bending it with your fingers and thumb, then it's very imprecise, and all of a sudden it'll be jumping up somewhere else. Having said that, look at the terrain that I'm trying to go over. It is a little bit extreme. If you're just doing something like a farmyard scene or a factory scene where it's pretty flat, then you haven't got any of them kind of problems. This is only because I'm going up and down some 4 or 5 inches in total that the bending of the tube and getting it precise with the landscape is so important. So there we've got our tube bent to shape and laying in the landscape with the top just level with the surface. So now we need to think about cutting it. And these are the 2 Dremel cutters I've been using. The smaller one, be careful with those, they shatter very easily, and they're absolutely no good once you come to tight corners. Now in my case, because of the severe contours, I've had to lift the transit tube out of the trench that it was laying in, and I've had to try and support it wherever possible so that I can get the Dremel cutter in and start cutting. And this is another shot where you can see that the tube has been lifted up and it's supported wherever possible, and I'm using like a sandbag in that pillowcase to try and support it as evenly as possible while I do the cutting. Now please be very careful when using these disc cutters, and I recommend that youngsters don't use them at all. It takes a lot of experience to use these. If they're slightly out of line, or as they actually break through, they snatch so easily that it can be quite dangerous. As you can see, I'm trying to support it underneath the bridge there, and I'm having to hold the Dremel with one hand. So I can promise you I'm not enjoying this one little bit. So as I say, I think I'm going to have to lift this section, support it, and then try cutting some more of the slot. Raised up now and supported the best I can, so that I'm not putting any undue pressure on it. So now we're going to again try cutting the next section. Now I know I keep mentioning it, but for anybody just dropping in for the first time, flexibility is paramount, because this is a folding and semi-portable layout. So that's the reason I've used hot glue. But the problem with hot glue is that obviously you can only do so much before the glue goes cold. So I had 3 hot glue guns at the ready, so that I could get as much glue into the trench as possible and then glue it down, pressing it into position and trying to get it level with the landscape. that's where the two ends meet, and so we now need some kind of winding mechanism to wind the transit chain backwards and forwards. So there you saw the winch mechanism arriving by rail, and this is the specially forged extra long drive shaft that has just arrived on site. No, it's not, only joking. It's the aluminium splined shaft that runs down the full length of a vertical blind, and the idea is that that will come through from the back of the layout all the way through the scenery and into the little winch mechanism. Now I think the little winch mechanism was inspirational. This is from a vertical blind. On a vertical blind you've got these little devices that the vertical blinds hang from, and they turn backwards and forwards 90 degrees to open and close. So I've taken one of those and just mounted it in this rather shoddy little box that I'm calling a winch, and this will take the motion from the horizontal drive and turn it into a vertical drive. And inside there you'll see a green worm wheel or worm gear, and that is driving a small white pinion gear. Now the white pinion gear has only got teeth 2/3 of the way round, because it only needs to turn backwards and forwards 90 degrees when it's in a vertical blind. So I've taken that pinion out. It's just a spring clip sort of thing mechanism on the end of the pinion. You just squeeze that together and you can pull the pinion out, and I've filed the teeth into the gear so that the teeth are complete all the way round. So it's an ingenious little device. It changes the horizontal drive into a vertical drive, and it also gives a huge reduction as well. So the little green worm wheel has got to go round lots and lots of times before the winding drum or winch will revolve once, which makes it ideal if you want to motorize it, or that's the general idea. So here I'm pushing the drive shaft through the scenery, which is just expanding foam, hoping not to hit anything, and on the end of the drive shaft I've then cut or filed some teeth so that I can attach that to the drill, and with a bit of luck and the wind in the right direction we should be able to cut through the plywood at the back. Then I've made a little round bobbin or winch drum covered in neoprene rubber, and hopefully the chain will wrap around that, or the cord will wrap around that, coming in from one tube and being let out into the other one. So then it was a matter of cutting the tubes off to length. so that that can be placed on top, and hopefully the transit chain will come in round the bobbin and back out again. Because of the severe contours on my layout, I was unable to get the Dremel tool horizontal on quite a few sections, and so they needed cutting like this with a junior hacksaw blade, and I've just glued some lollipop sticks on to make a handle. On the corners also, the Dremel tool, you end up with something that looks like a 50p piece, and so the corners had to be cut using this little hacksaw blade, which is extremely tedious as well. Something else you need to bear in mind is friction. The longer you have a section, the more friction there is for the cord or chain, and the more corners you have, you're increasing the friction quite dramatically, and I think I'm pushing the limits on this section that's approximately 9 foot long. And unfortunately, I don't think the little mechanism I've been showing is going to be strong enough. The little plastic gears are just not up to it, because I need to put quite a lot of tension on the cord or chain for it to pull through the 9 foot of tubing. And as I say, I don't think them little gears are going to be strong enough to stand up to it. But the section against the station there is obviously a lot shorter, and that's working fine. This is another section I had to cut by hand. I couldn't get the Dremel tool in horizontal, and so obviously the disc wasn't vertical to cut the slot. Cutting disc that's just jammed and exploded. So whenever you're using any cutting discs of any kind, always make sure you're wearing spectacles or goggles to protect your eyes. It's very important. You might only be doing small little jobs, but if one of them discs shatter and fly up into your eyes, then you're in serious trouble. That is just one of many discs that jammed and shattered with bits flying everywhere. The only people who don't take their eyesight for granted are those who are already blind. I know wearing safety specs is a nuisance, but please do so when using any cutting tools. I know what I'm talking about. My mum was blind. Right, if I show you this one, which I got working, there you see the little winch mechanism. On the outside we've got a handle. On this one I've used nylon cord, and I've had to, I don't know whether you can see that, I've had to use a needle and thread, and I've sewn the two ends together. Now the problem is, how do you get any tension on it? Well, the beauty of this is that the drive shaft is splined, and so this will slide backwards and forwards, and so the idea was that you can just wrap the, sorry that I'm in the way, you can wrap the cord around the winch drum, and then because it's a spline drive shaft, it will actually pull backwards and forwards, and so that puts some tension on the drum, and it pulls on the cord, and there you can see the drive pin coming into view. The only problem I've got at the moment is that the cord sometimes wraps over the top of each other. I really need something like a worm wheel, or a groove that the cord runs into, goes around and then feeds out again, because it wraps over the top of each other and intends to jam. The road surface is just wet and dry sandpaper glued across, and then a slit cut in it and some sandpaper run up and down until you've got a nice smooth slot. So using the sandpaper gives quite a nice smooth road surface, which is not too bad. The biggest problem is that any of the N-gauge vehicles, the wheels are just so small, they're not actually designed or meant to be rolling along, and so very few of them roll freely. They'll only roll freely if you've got quite a nice smooth surface, and that's the biggest hindrance. I'm absolutely positive this would work a lot better on 00, where the wheels of the vehicle are a lot bigger and will roll quite freely. It's paramount that I get this as smooth as possible, because with the tiny wheels in N-gauge, then it just doesn't want to roll freely. If you were to use polyfiller and you were sanding that down and you get a nice smooth surface, I'm absolutely sure it'll work fine. I've used decorator's cork and PVA glue to put this filler down, and it's very difficult to rub down because it's like a rubbery consistency. So all these tiny little bumps, when the tractor hits these, then obviously it's like trying to climb over a mountain. On a normal layout that's sound and strong and isn't going to move, I'm sure that to finish that off would be relatively simple. To cover that in ordinary filler, rub it down, you can soon scrape the slot out, vacuum it, run some sandpaper backwards and forwards, and you're in business. For me to do this, I'm trying to put decorator's cork up to it, because at least decorator's cork has got that little bit of flexibility. So, as I say, it's not perfected as yet, but it's showing promise, and it's very gratifying how many of you actually appreciate an N-gauge tractor doing a 3-point turn with only a push-pull control. Sorry I haven't answered all the questions on the forums, that's why I'm directing people here to the video, in the hope that it answers most of your questions and inquiries. Sorry also that I haven't been able to get a 00 demonstration set up yet, but I will do as soon as I can. I hope you found something of interest. Thank you to all the new subscribers, that's very much appreciated. Don't forget, if you want updates, click the little cogwheel at the side of the subscribe banner. And as always, thank you very much for watching.